Okay, so this is our talk on supporting sleep and reducing restricted eating in young children. This is a talk for all sorts parents that you can listen to at your leisure. If you are supporting children with sleep difficulties, then you're probably exhausted. And if you are supporting children with restricted eating, then you're probably stressed. So it's nice to be able to use this talk, come back to this talk whenever you need to. And again, ask questions when you come back to the group. Either if you are a parent from the Growing Together group or the toddlers group, somebody from all sorts hopefully will be able to support you with any questions that you have and maybe refer back to me if necessary. Okay, so what we'll cover in this session is supporting sleep, not surprising. We'll look at these daily rhythms. We call them diurnal rhythms. It's just the daily rhythms. Sleep routines, sleep hygiene, you may have heard that term, and then thinking about nutrition for sleep. These talks go well together because actually nutrients help children also to manage to sleep, to turn on their sleep neurotransmitters, and to have regulated blood sugar across the night so they don't wake up because of that as well. And then the second part will be thinking about the eating aspect, thinking about sensory aspects to food aversion, why children might fear foods, thinking about kind of emotional components, attachment and food behaviors, why there may be health reasons for food aversions, and then also thinking about these sensory attachments, sensory factors in more detail as well. Okay, this is what we're looking for, isn't it? A child asleep. Some of you are watching this going, oh my word, if only it could look that natural and that calm and that easy. But we really want all children to have a good sleep because we know that sleep for all of us, adults and children, has really good health benefits and that our bodies are reliant on sleep so that we can then detoxify or do body repair systems. Our body doesn't shut down fully at night, it just shifts gear. And when we're alert, we're busy doing our day stuff. And when we're asleep, all these natural systems of repair and detoxification should be coming in for our kids and for us as well. Interrupted sleep then will have a negative impact bodily as well as for our alertment and our emotional selves. Okay, so first thing I'll talk about is this body clock, diurnal rhythms. These are the 24-hour cycles that are controlled by light and dark. And this is where you'll have heard people talking about, using electronic devices that give light that makes the brain feel like it's daytime. In kind of less techie times, there was a clear difference between day and night. In the day, the sun was out, the house was bright. At night time, maybe 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, it was now dark and they were using candlelight. Now we have lights that go on all the time. It can feel bright depending on the kinds of bulbs that you're using in your house. That can feel quite bright and can send messages to the brain about be awake, be awake. So melatonin, you'll have heard of, some of your children will be taking it. We make our own melatonin. We make our own melatonin in response to the light going on outside or in the house. Some people have difficulty making their own melatonin for nutrient and genetic reasons. I'm not going to go into that now, but if you've got any questions, you can come and find me and ask me. But also, it's almost like a seesaw effect. Cortisol, we think of cortisol as being our stress chemical, correct, stress hormone. Actually, cortisol is our alertness, our daytime, our be awake hormone as well. It rises with stress, but it's there all the time. It's at its peak in the morning when you wake up. And as the day goes along, your cortisol levels slightly drop, slightly drop, slightly drop. And then in the evening, our cortisol is low and our melatonin picks up. At night time, if our cortisol is high, it's really hard to fall asleep. And you know that yourself, when you're really stressed, it's really hard to fall asleep. So we want to make sure our children's cortisol is down. We want to give their brains a strong message that it's nighttime, getting the light right. and then hope that the melatonin picks up. Other aspects of our daily rhythms are also things like the times that we eat, if they're in a rhythm, the times that we, go to the loo and do a poo, for example, that's part of our daily rhythm. If things aren't regular in any of those aspects, it feeds into our daily clock. And that can impact on a child because, as you see here, children's clocks are still developing. Your child's body clock is still developing. Do not lose hope. They're in the very early stages of making sense of day and night and of the world. And if your children has developmental challenges, then the cognitive understanding of nighttime and patterns and what mummy says is also not mature enough yet to lead their own desire to kind of manage this day and night thing as well. So we need to, at this stage, supporting your child with their diurnal rhythms, we need at this stage to build in that program ourselves. And that consistency is really important. And you know that, but your child also needs to know that. So things to watch out for. Are they tired? Don't put your child to bed before they're tired. If you can find a way of stretching their sleep to such a time as you know they're going to be tired, they're much more likely to fall asleep naturally. So eye rubbing, yawning, you know that kind of cozying in behavior might be signs of sleepiness coming to town. Our energy peaks in the morning, yeah, and then after we've had a sleep, we might also feel more energized. Be thoughtful about your child's daytime sleeps. And again, you can speak to somebody of all sorts if you're kind of wondering about that, if you've got health visitors involved, or other health support for your child. Ask questions about, what amount of daytime sleep might be helpful, how much daytime sleep then might be impacting on their nighttime sleep, and getting that balance between what they absolutely need for rest, and then what might be stopping them from falling asleep at night as well. Okay. So here is the advice. How can you help? Expose your toddler to natural daylight in the morning. If you have access to a garden, then when they get up, if it's the time that you would like them to get up, so say for example for you and your family, 7 o'clock is a great time for getting up. I might tend to then have the curtains closed until about 7, and then open the curtains, open the door, let them into the garden, get bright light in their eyes, basically, in their pupils, and that will set their daily clock. Okay, bright daytime has started now. So manage the light in your home to help them to make sense of daytime starts at 7, daytime starts at 7:30 or what have you. And again, in the evening, you want to dim your lights to have this kind of, again, signal to the brain, which is very, very responsive to light factors, that now it's nighttime. Close the curtains. It's tricky in the summer because obviously it's quite bright, quite late, but then close the curtains, make the room dark, have a very dark, dull light on as part of your kind of wind down routine, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. Okay, really keep your sleep-wake routines consistent. You can flex this with children who are really good in this rhythm. But if you've got children who really struggle with this daily rhythm, keep those routines consistent. If you've been invited out somewhere, then come home for their bedtime or manage that accordingly. Your children will not be able to flex at this stage when they don't have a rhythm in place. Once rhythms are in place, they can flex it somewhat. Okay, and a really, really important one, avoid excitement, avoid screens, avoid anything that's going to give mixed messages to the daylight receptors in the optic system and in the brain, and also anything that can ramp up their cortisol levels. So rough and tumble play is great earlier in the day, but in the evening, that's too exciting. Big exercise, again, is great earlier in the day, but at nighttime, high levels of exercise will make children feel more alert. So sleepiness, and I'll talk about that routine in a second. Okay, so this is the typical kind of sleep routine. Some of you don't have a bath. I already know that, so think about how you can create something really relaxing for your child. So bath time obviously gets them clean, but it also generates this soothing time where they can just have the warm water on them and chill. I am a big, big lover of Epsom salts. Epsom salts are basically magnesium sulfate, and we'll talk about magnesium in a second as being one of the most fantastic nutrients for your child. And oftentimes children, or all of us, are actually quite low in magnesium. So Epsom salts is a great way of relaxing children. It's great for relaxing muscles, but it's also a great way to get magnesium into a child when they're not great eaters. And I'll just say a note on Epsom salts. If you are doing Epsom salt baths, if you're doing Epsom salt kind of like, sticking their feet in or what have you, then if your child has dry skin, it may be because one of the reasons for dry skin is low magnesium. So if your child has dry skin, maybe they need more magnesium. However, if your child has dry skin and you go into a concentrated Epsom salts bath, it's going to make their skin itchy. So what I always suggest is if you are doing Epsom salt baths or Epsom salt little foot basins or whatever it is, start with a tiny, tiny amount and then see how their skin goes, and ever so slightly, gradually build it up. Build it up to about half of what they say on the packet. So depending on what you buy, it will say use whatever amount depending on how many gallons of water you're using. Use about half, start tiny, like a teaspoon, and then build up to about half of what it says in the packet, because obviously with small kids, they don't need so much. But just watch their skin. If it gets itchy, then make sure you wash it off. Okay, and then a nice massage after the bath. If you've got more than one child, then see if you can get a second adult around. That deep pressure input into their body helps them feel secure with you. Again, can kind of really support them to relax with you. And the longer they're relaxed before bedtime, the more chance that their cortisol, already mentioned cortisol, the more chance that their cortisol will be dropping down. Cortisol, when it's in you, lasts for about 20 minutes before it's detoxified. So you can't just switch cortisol off, it lingers. So if you have a half hour, 40-minute bath time, bedtime routine, where they're starting to get really relaxed, then there's a really great chance that their cortisol will be right down when they get into bed. Again, do the pajamas and teeth in the same order every time. With teeth, you may decide that teeth brushing is quite stressful, so maybe you want to choose to do your teeth brushing before bath time. That's not the last thing they do, because then they're like, but maybe that's the first thing they do. Maybe they do their teeth after their dinner, and depending on what they have later, or after their snack before bedtime. You probably are doing a lot of this already, but I just want to reinforce that if you're doing it, it's not that you're doing it wrong. It's maybe that we need to think about other aspects of the system, but this is still what would be helpful for you. Quiet activity, storytelling is great. But don't overdo the language if your child struggles with comprehension. So looking at picture books, pointing to the pictures, having a little smile at each other. Again, maybe having a little nursery rhyme, which is really calm. Nothing exciting. No screens. Don't leave them to look at a story on a screen. A story on a screen is not the same as a story with you. And even when I go into nurseries and schools these days, teachers have stopped telling stories. They now say, it's story time, and they show a video of someone telling a story. But actually, the whole thing about story time is your togetherness, that you are sharing your calm with them. It's an attachment time that they will then take this feeling with you to your bed. And that you will be very present in their whole selves because of this routine. Again, at bedtime itself, some of your children will really not want to separate from you, and so we want to make sure that the child feels comfortable and safe, and build that up depending. And you'll have had guidance, I'm sure, regarding that from other professionals as well. If the leaving the child is tricky, maybe have an individual chat again with someone from all sorts, that they can maybe find someone, either give you advice or find someone who can give you some advice. Keep it brief, keep it warm, keep it consistent. Make sure that you share your calm, loving self with them so that they keep that at night and can remember it at times when they feel unsettled. That's what attachment is all about. Start the routine at the same time each evening. Keep it short, but not so short that it's rushed. And again, if one parent feels very like all my evenings are taken up with this, make sure that that parent's supported. Swap in. Make sure that child is happy to go to sleep with either of you if you're a household with two parents in. If your child is, really reluctant or resistant, then, be strong, stay calm, and think about how much they can manage of you stepping away, because there is also that gradually fading yourself out of a situation, and it may be that you are at different stages at that. So I don't want to give you advice if you're at different stages at that with your child. Lots of children, almost all children, need an attachment kind of object, a comfort object, and they will choose what that is. Often it's a blanket, maybe it's a teddy, but that's a really important object because it's almost like that object replaces you when they're asleep. They can cuddle that all night, they can smell it all night, they can feel it all night, and that in their mind and in their body represents you, so that then they feel less stressed about separating from you. And be patient. Patience comes from you getting the support. Yeah, and so please reach out to people so you're not feeling on your own from this. It's very, very difficult to be patient when you're already up to here in your own stress level. When you're struggling, we really want you to have whatever backup you need so that you can get through this. And remember, your kids are tiny. They're not going to be like this forever. Children develop, they grow, their bodies get used to these routines, their processing improves. So you're not going to be in this groove forever. It may feel like it at the moment, but they will shift out of it. And with that belief in mind, there's a light at the end of the tunnel if you can do these systems. So again, I talked about sleep hygiene, didn't I? Yeah. So think about the bedroom. Cool is better. So on hot nights, it's not great. Turn the heating off earlier if it's in the winter. Cool that room down. Blackout blinds are really helpful, or curtains, like dark curtains, because then if they are seeing that it's still light outside, that's going to be hard for their brain to know that it's nighttime. Because obviously within summers, it's bright quite late, and we definitely want our children to go to bed before the sun goes down. Keep noise to a minimum. Remember that some of your children are quite sound sensitive and very alerted by it. So for this time, it's really important to keep things quiet, and remove anything that kind of toys that might light up or make sounds, that might stimulate the child as well. I know how difficult then and stressful it is to try and keep the household quiet for this particular child. And so I do empathise with all of that. Denise says keep the house quiet, but it's really noisy and no one else would be quiet. And I've been there. I've had 3 kids who actually 2 of them were quite sound sensitive. So I do understand. But at the same time, your child probably needs a little night light. So a low night light somewhere nearby that they can feel that, although it's dark in the room, they are safe. Some of your children might have poor body awareness, so having a light where they can still see their hands, still know where they are, is really important. Some of our kids, if they can't feel where their body is and it's dark, it can be quite scary. So a little light night, very, very low level, can be really helpful. I've already talked about switching off screens. I've already talked about avoiding exciting activities, and maybe think about the kinds of activities that your child enjoys that's really calming. Drawing can be nice potentially for older children when they grow up and they can do that sort of thing. But I'm wondering about just the story, just the being, just the massage, just the cuddles and the comfort, head stroking, getting them into that body zone when they're the age that they are at the moment. So body input now and cognitive input, with drawing and puzzles, maybe in a few years' time when they've got themselves a little bit more developed. I've already talked about daytime routines, and the other thing I really want to talk about, which I'll talk about later as well, is this sugary snacks thing. Um, Toddlers love sugar, of course they do. Sugar is brilliant, but sugar's really, really bad for making you have a peak and then a dip. So when you have something sweet, you'll get a sugar peak. Your sugar levels will go up, your blood sugar levels will go up, and then following the blood sugar level peak, you'll have a dip afterwards, and the dip then actually can wake kids up. If you have a drop of blood sugars at night, then whether you're a child or an adult, if your blood sugars drop dramatically at night, then you'll have another cortisol spike, because cortisol, one of its roles is to release more blood sugars. Your body does not like to be without any sugar. Okay, your natural blood sugars are usually perfectly good to get you through the night. But if you eat something really sweet before bedtime, like a load of biscuits, then you'll have a blood sugar drop half an hour later, and then you'll have a cortisol spike that will wake you up again. And so bear that in mind, and I'll talk about that as well. The kinds of things that you can eat to maintain consistent blood sugars in the evening is really, really important. Consistency is key. Across your child's life, across their day, they will need consistency. They're just learning about themselves and the world, and it makes sense to them if you can be consistent. Even if it's hard for them to build a program initially for the first couple of weeks, maybe month, whatever it is, once they understand the process, then they will make more sense of it and may be more able to comply with those routines with your help. Okay, and I've already said, haven't I, that nutrition supports health. We're really thinking about blood sugar balance, so avoid sugary drinks, avoid sugary sweets, avoid chocolate, because caffeine likewise is a stimulant. Makes sense, doesn't it? Avoid anything that's going to kind of ramp up their digestive juices and cause discomfort. And then the other thing you want to avoid is too much fluid at night. You don't want them to be thirsty, because then they won't sleep because they're thirsty. But drinking a massive drink before bedtime might also then lead to them needing to wee at night time. Lots of your kids, if they're in nappies, won't be that bothered. They'll just wee in their nappies. But once you start into the world of getting them potty trained, then you want to be mindful of not giving them too much liquid at night. Again, don't give them no liquid. When they're thirsty, they won't fall asleep either, but find a balance. There are some foods out there that give you natural melatonin. So if your child's not on melatonin, there may be some things that they can have that can help with melatonin. So pistachios, who knew? Pistachios have got quite a good melatonin intake. Clearly, again, with any child who's got nut issues, don't give them pistachios. I'm just saying that to cover my own back and make sure your kids are all healthy. But pistachios can be great and they're really healthy. To make melatonin, we need B6 and magnesium. And also to make another lovely sleep neurotransmitter called GABA, likewise, these two work together. And magnesium, I've already talked about, but B6 likewise is really good. Oats can be helpful. They again have a little aspect of melatonin in them, but they're slow energy, so not quick oats, but oats with plenty of fiber. Then maybe in the evening a little bowl of some sort of porridgey thing can be helpful, with maybe some nut butter or something if they're okay with nuts. Something that's stable so they can have like a little snack, not too much to digest, but a little snack to manage their blood sugar levels across the night. People talk about turkey and chicken being high in tryptophan. So tryptophan is one of the building blocks to making melatonin. So if we eat healthy and our genetics allow us, then we can make our own melatonin. We make our melatonin out of tryptophan. Loads of foods have tryptophan. Chicken and turkey is one. Chickpeas is another. There's loads of them. But provided they're eating a good diet with a range of foods, then we would hope that they can make their own melatonin. But some children have a genetic predisposition, so it's harder for them. And cherry juice. Again, not too much sugar, but tart cherry juice, if they have a small amount also, can be helpful for melatonin. Okay. All right, so that's a quick thought about sleep. Each of you will maybe have some questions answered. Each of you now probably have more questions. If you have more questions, ask all sorts for some guidance. And if you're able to pin me down, I'm more than happy to answer them as well. Okay, I'm just saying this because this video will be used for future groups, and I can't, depending on whether I'm still part of all sorts or not. Fingers crossed I will be. All right, so restricted eating, a massively important area to focus on with your child. Everybody wants their child to eat healthily. Our brains are developing across the lifespan, but toddlers' brains are growing exponentially, and they grow out of the food you give them. Their brains cannot grow out of air. I mean, air is helpful for oxygen, don't get me wrong, but they grow out of the foods that you give them, especially omega-3 fats, and healthy fats like olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. All of these things will support the brain. Protein for neurotransmitters, absolutely critical as well. And clearly carbohydrates for energy, and all of these foods wrap up a range of vitamins, minerals, essential amino acids. Loads of things are wrapped up in these delicious, hopefully, packages. So find a way to support your child to eat now, and it's unbelievably stressful. I know that. But please don't take restricted eating lightly, because this is the stage when your child is growing. And if children have restricted eating, they're much more likely to be iron deficient for anemia. They're much more likely to then have low omega fats, which impact on your immune system and your brain growth. They're much more likely to have sleep disturbance, either because they're actually hungry or because they are not getting the nutrients they need to switch on sleep. So it impact and behavioral challenges likewise. Children are overexcited because they only eat sugar, and or craving foods because whatever reason their brain is telling them, gotta have this, gotta have this. Then that's all going to impact on their behavior as well. So this is a priority, which I think you know, and hopefully the next few slides will be really helpful. So I put health factors at the foreground of this because I think restricted eating can potentially stem from an early negative experience, due to health factors. We're all born with a drive to feed, and it's quite rare that a child will, for example, reject milk first off. We have such drives within our system to take food in, unless there are negative experiences around food in these early days of life that then have a cascade downwards effect to impact on them. Reflux is a biggie, and most of you will know if your child has had reflux across their lifespan. I would argue, having had reflux in childhood and adulthood myself, I would argue that the obvious reflux in babies, even if they stop vomiting, may well still be a factor as silent reflux. So they may be experiencing discomfort, but they may be responding to discomfort, but you don't see the signs because they're no longer vomiting. So acid reflux can make eating painful. If your child arches their back, cries during feeds, frequently vomits, speak to your GP. Or if they have sleep issues, because if you have reflux, so reflux is when the acid comes back up into the upper throat. In that situation, when you lie down in your bed at night time, you're much more inclined to have acid coming up, which will stop you falling asleep. So, if you have doubts, speak to your GP. You can always do a test with their guidance of taking something. I'm thinking, should I say the word or not? Something like Gaviscon, which just forms a foam at the top to stop it feeling so painful. I'm really against using acid blockers like omeprazole, unless unless there's a really strong medical reason for it. Because once you stop acid, then you don't have stomach acid enough to break down the foods, and that causes another cascade of issues. So talk with a sensible GP who can give you some guidance around that, or come and talk to us. Okay, allergies and intolerances. Again, if a food makes you feel unwell, you are not going to want to eat it. And so there are a range of things which commonly come up as allergies. And think about your child's response to food. If they're a great eater but they just don't like certain foods, it may well be that those foods don't make them feel very well. One group of those is high histamine foods, where they eat it and their digestive system doesn't feel good afterwards. And uh, and I'm not going to list them because I don't want to make you all confused. But if a child's feeling unwell because of certain foods, provided they have a good diet, then maybe those specific foods are triggers. I mean, an obvious one is shellfish. Maybe and lots of kids don't like shellfish anyway, but some people never like shellfish and then they realize it's because they're a little bit allergic and it makes them feel horrible. So watch out for that. Some of your children likewise might have what we call oral motor difficulties. So that's difficulty with moving foods around their mouth, maybe chewing foods, maybe swallowing foods. And if that's an issue, then they're going to struggle with eating certain types of food too. And they may feel uncomfortable with food with lumps where they can't kind of shift the lump around compared to the liquidy stuff, or very chewy foods as well. Bear in mind too, they may have, if when a child is getting teeth, which some of your children may be, because typically children get their back teeth right up to the age of 2. So maybe when they're chewing things, it doesn't feel nice, and maybe that's going to impact on their eating as well. Hopefully, when they don't have pain anymore, they'll just crack on with eating again. But bear it in mind, if there's a change in their eating behaviours, then bear that in mind. Again, if they have nutrient deficiencies, if they've got food aversion and they're not eating very much, then maybe they'll have nutrient deficiencies. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. But some of those nutrient deficiencies then can actually impact on their wanting to eat. So iron can suppress your appetite. We make hormones in our digestive system that send messages to our brain to tell us we're hungry and eat more. But if we don't make those hormones because of nutrient issues, then we don't get the messages very well. Likewise, zinc gives us our sense of taste. It's one of the parts of our sense of taste. So people who are low zinc won't think that food feels wonderful. So why would you eat? Because it's kind of tastes like cardboard anyway. Some of those low zinc children will then want only spicy food. So any of those children who go for high salt, high sauce type meals with loads of flavour, they may well be low zinc. So again, find someone who can give you some guidance around that. Constipation, it's one of my hot topics. Make sure your child's digestive tract is working properly. Our kids can be really, again, we might force ourselves if our stomach's feeling bad because we know we should eat 3 times a day, but our children will just be responding to how their body feels. Constipation can obviously get all bunged up so they don't feel hungry because it's all kind of full anyway. And also, when we are constipated, we're not clearing our digestive tract of the toxins. And actually what can happen is those toxins get reabsorbed into the body. So we just don't feel right. We just feel horrible. And then we don't feel like eating because of that as well. So seek advice, take it seriously. Do not let a GP say, for example, I'm just going to quote what I've heard, the GP will say, well, they're growing and they look okay, and so let's not worry about it. Maybe they can grow because they're eating loads of carbohydrates and maybe they're eating kind of sausages or what have you. But that doesn't mean that they're getting the omega fats for their brain function. That doesn't mean they're getting the zinc and the iron that they need. That doesn't mean that they're getting the B vitamins, which support them to be calm and happy and to sleep as well. So if your child is having developmental difficulties, then it's even more important that they get the nutrients they need in order to be able to develop and grow. Don't let GPs say, well, I'm not going to worry because they're eating bread for every meal and they're obviously doing well on it because look at them, they're nice and tall. It may well be that they're tall, but then their brain is really depleted of other things that they need. Sensory aspects of food diversion. So, lots of OTs will be really foreground in sensory, but I want you to think much more broadly about this. I'll just give you the example. When I was a child and I wasn't well, I always wanted chicken soup. So, I wanted chicken soup not because I didn't like the sensory aspect of other things, it's just I felt really unwell and I wanted my favorite food. So just be sensible when you're thinking about it. What else is going on? Maybe it is sensory, but there may be many other reasons why it might be an issue for them. So children, young children especially, they just like to eat safe foods, things that they've eaten before. Some of your children will be really specific about that. It's got to be from this packet, otherwise I'm just not sure about it. And then how things are put on their plate for some children, they may have their own thinking rules about how that is. Some children don't want things touching each other. Some things want them in different ways. Empathize with their feelings. Sometimes they have brain drivers, which make it quite stressful if things are not that way. Choose your battles. For me, the battle is to get them to eat. And so if things need to be separate on the plate for this time, then so be it, depending on the child, because it may well be that their brain is fixated on these patterns now because they are lacking in nutrients. And when all the nutrients kick in, the brain functions better and some of those fixations slip away. So let's be sensible and think about the whole child in various angles. Some children can be really have issues with strong smells or unfamiliar smells, and so they may only choose things which are either cold or simple in how they smell, rather than things that make the kitchen really waft of all sorts. I love the smells, so that's not me. Texture can be a biggie as well for people and children. So think about the textures aspect of things. And again, they're not making it up. They're not doing it to be annoying. Their sensory system really doesn't feel happy with different textures. I have a friend, I mean, she's my age, and she's just like, I can't eat meat. Oh, the stringiness, and she's almost freaking out with the texture aspect. So it is a real thing. And some children then need smoothies, need things mashed up. Some children don't want smoothies, don't want things mashed up. They need crunchy. Find as big a range of foods as you can that can provide a big enough repertoire within what they'll cope with texture-wise. And, I know you're so busy, but if you start to batch cook things and freeze them in order to get this right for your child, so they can have a broader diet, then that can be very, very helpful and also less wasteful. When you're buying things and trying things and then they don't want it and then you throw it out, then that is going to get expensive in the end. So when we think about taste, young children don't like bitter things, they don't like sour things, unless they're very low in zinc, in which case they might be fine with it. But typically, those tastes can trigger the brain to think, that might be poisonous. So bear that in mind. It's only later that sour sweets can become a little bit more popular. And again, temperature. We tepid food is fine for kids. Actually, my husband really likes hot food, and but actually for little kids, it's typically fine for them to have something that's a bit cooler, or cold foods as well. Okay. So think about this as well, within the sensory system, a child might be a sensory seeker. So if you have a child who's seeking out sensory input, they're the ones who run around, they like to stroke everything, they want to get into everything, then equally they may be able to get some of that sensory input through crunchy foods or strong flavors. We can provide that sensory input equally through their diet. Others will be avoiders. They might be avoiding noise. They might be avoiding bright lights. That might feel overwhelming for them. They may well be They may well benefit from predictable foods, smooth foods, and things that don't have lumps, that sort of stuff. Okay. And so you can maybe think about their whole sensory profile And I think it would be really helpful to do that. And at all sorts, when I've seen your child, I tend to put something together for you so that when you leave, you have a bit of a sensory profile. The food aspect will be part of that because you're sensing it in your mouth. And it's related to the child's brain wiring. They're not necessarily doing this to annoy you. Of course, there are children then and situations where children learn that they like crisps and they don't want to eat carrots, and they'll hold out for you to give them the crisps. Kind of a clever child, really, but that is related to their behaviours. But when they have sensory processing challenges across the board, then bear in mind that food may be part of that as well. So typically, if we have sensory issues with food, we often start with food play. So there's no with the food that they are not keen on, then just to get them used to looking at it and get them used to feeling it in their hands or smelling it without the need to eat it can be really helpful. We might gradually chain. We talk about adding a little bit at a time so that you build up their understanding and their experience of foods as well. I talked about not mixing foods together if that child has difficulty with it. Some children like a certain spoon. Some children have difficulty scooping up certain things. They prefer to eat with their fingers. That might impact on their eating messy things. So bear in mind, what is about the ability to get the food into their mouth and what is it that's actually an aversion or a behavioural trait that they're avoiding it for. Okay, and eat together as well. Eating together so they see you eating the food, so that they know that food is safe for the family. Okay. So that leads us on really nicely to children who fear foods. So there's the health aspects, there's the sensory aspects, and then there are children who are quite fearful. And again, children with developmental challenges may find it difficult then to cognitively process, is this food safe or is this food not safe? And they're quite likely to avoid things that are new just because I haven't had it before, don't know. In which case, then if you eat it with them and they see you eating it, then that might lend themselves to thinking, well, if mummy or daddy or grandma is eating this and they look fine, in fact, they look like they're enjoying it, then maybe I can at some point next week, next month, or what have you, maybe I can start to think about eating that myself. Children, as I've already alluded to, if they've had negative past experiences of eating, say they've choked on a grape, or they've had reflux, or they've vomited in and around the time they've eaten something, they might relate that food to a negative experience and then may avoid it in future. So depending on the food and how vital it is, we might want to help them overcome that through supporting them to feel safe around it again. This is a biggie, okay? The next one, thinking about pressure and anxiety. Pressure and anxiety when they're eating. It is a really stressful thing for parents to know that you are fully responsible for your child, and a big part of them surviving is that they eat, and yet the child doesn't want to eat for other reasons. And so if you're feeling really stressed, then that stress will feed, pardon the pun, feed into the child's nervous system as well. And once we become anxious around food, then our nervous system actually switches to stress mode and away from digest mode. So have you heard of that? So fight flight is that stress response, and rest and digest is when the nervous system is in a calm place. So being calm, being happy, being together in a warm relationship will support the child to feel relaxed so that they digest their food. And if everything is highly stressful, then they are less likely to digest the food that they are eating, and they're more likely to have that cascade of constipation, bloatedness, feeling uncomfortable that they will relate to meal times. So it's a real balance, and I totally get that. But I'm just providing you with the information so you can be thoughtful around that. Children then also, when they're small, there's very little that they can control in their lives. There are many things that they have to do. But if they are in that stage of like, okay, I know I'm a real person and I'm going to assert my individuality in this, they may well choose foods to not eat. Again, to be assertive, to feel that they can have some control in this situation. And so bear that in mind as well. In those situations, you can help them pick the food to put on their plate potentially, but what they're picking is a range of good food. So don't say to them, well, you can have this poor quality food or this great quality food. Give them a choice amongst a range of good quality foods. So when I talk about good quality foods, it's going to be actual vegetables, actual protein like meat or eggs or cheese, or nuts and seeds, things that you have is only a step away from the farm, basically. If it's processed in a packet, if it's got very, very few ingredients, then again, it's probably a better quality food. The more additives you have on a packet, the less good quality that food is. So with your children, try and use whole foods, foods that just come straight from the farm with very little processing, and low sugar foods as well, low additive foods. Fruit is great because fruit comes packaged up with fiber, but fruit juice is less good because you just get a sugar kick, and no fiber attached to it. So smoothies are better because the fiber gets processed together with the sugar. So smoothies are slightly better. Okay. So thinking about attachment relationships, okay, so you are the child's attachment figures. How you feel at mealtime with your child in your relationship is really important. And so a secure attachment, and I'm just including this for completeness, a secure attachment is absolutely critical for children to feel able to try new foods. Anxious meal times can reinforce food avoidance. Children can read your facial expressions and your body language, and that can impact them as well because they learn everything about eating through you, whether you're the parent or you're a foster carer, or another person, a nanny or a babysitter at mealtimes, grandma, and they're going to be looking at you and reading your emotions in this moment. And children may refuse food to get your attention, to get connection, to have you close by. Now, that's not necessarily them being naughty. It may well be that for some reason they have a real need for you to be close to them, and this is their way to pull you in. So again, think about how you use boundaries accordingly, depending on what you're reading in this situation. Have you seen them much today? Are you a full-time working parent and meal times are the only time that you really spend time together as a family? So your child is maybe saying, let's just prolong this family moment. And in which case then, of course, give them lots of attention at meal times, so that they then don't refuse foods. Just find a way of getting that balance for their needs and for their food as well. So I think I've probably talked about what you can do about it. So eating together, model eating a variety of foods. So if you don't like eating certain foods, then make sure somebody in your peer group can be good models for your child to eat a range of foods. Otherwise, your child may end up with a very restricted diet because of your restricted diet, which isn't helpful. No pressure, no bargaining. Give lots of praise when they eat, and praise around anything. Praise around, oh, you're here. Oh, wow, you smelt it. Oh, wow, you took it out of the packet or whatever. And then offer a mixture of foods, things that are new and things that maybe are more accepted, so that they're not hungry, because of course hunger then increases the cortisol, makes them more stressed. So find a way of getting that balance between them being hungry but not too stressed, and you being relaxed and providing a range of things accordingly. Okay, so just coming to the end now. Key takeaways: consistent routines, a good sleep hygiene setup are the foundation for healthy toddlers' sleep. Help their body clock to develop a pattern. It needs you to support that. They can't do it on their own at this stage. They're so young. And nutrition plays a really important role in sleep. So therefore, we want to make sure they have a good diet, and we want to make sure they're not having sugar at night time. So that aspect of the food aversion and the sleep together go hand in hand, actually, for lots and lots of children. Support their for food aversion support children in their sensory systems, in their emotional systems, in their health factors that we've talked about. Stay calm if you can, and if you can't, get someone else to do meal times for that time. Yeah, just switch in with someone who can be calm, because your child will read you, and then they will feel your stress accordingly, and then their digestive system will shut down. And this last bit is really important, okay? If you have a toddler who is on a highly restricted diet, please make sure that health people, GP, health visitors, are really taking that seriously. Do not get fobbed off with, well, they're a good height and they're a good weight. If all they're eating is biscuits, then they will be, they can potentially be quite a weighty child. And we will grow to what our genetics tells us to grow to, and we'll pull all the nutrients away from other aspects of our body to get our bones going. But our bones might be empty without calcium or what have you, magnesium, vitamin D, because they're just hollow if they're not eating enough. We might grow to a decent height, but what's within those bones may be very, very impacted by a restricted diet. Okay, so you are not on this journey alone. If you need to reach out, then please get that support in place early. Your child will thank you, and your future self will thank you too. Your future self will thank you if you can work towards getting this right for everyone. Okay, thanks very much.